Thank you for joining us for another edition of Jackman Radio. I'm your host, Mike Jackman, and we are returned today with a returning guest, Mr. Sean Stone, filmmaker, director, writer, and media host. Thanks for joining us again today, Sean.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. So I was really excited to see the announcement of your new film that you directed, RFK Legacy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and some of the background and how long you've been working on that project?
Sure. So we started production on that documentary back in 2024. Actually, on the day, if I'm correct, it was, if I'm right, the date was June 6th when RFK Sr. was killed.
I think he was shot on the 5th and he died on the...
Yes, June 6th is when he died at 1:44 a.m. for those that know the 144,000. And so actually we started our first interview was on June 6th, 2024. So we didn't plan it that way, it just happened. And,
really?
Yeah. And so we basically went into, production with interviews and editing, and we're able to get it done. That was last year, 24. We got it completed this summer and distributed on Angel. So it was a year-long process that is actually pretty quick. As far as people know, sometimes documentaries can take longer. It came together quite nicely once the idea was there for a parallel story. I was compelled. Obviously, I know RFK Jr. a little bit since for years, and I've always been a fan of his courage to stand up to the establishment and face the backlash as he has when questioning the vaccine safety or questioning the COVID narrative. So I respected him, and I felt like he has a lot of courage, which is what leadership is about. You have to have the courage to ask the tough questions and to take stances that are not necessarily popular. And then when he decided to run for president, I was encouraged by it. I didn't expect that he would be able to win, but I thought there was a great story there because his own father had run and been killed in the process of his campaign. And again, knowing that there was a conspiracy to kill RFK Sr. as there was to kill JFK, I felt that there was a great story there because RFK probably has not been as explored as a topic, as a subject as JFK has. So many books have been written on JFK, so many documentaries that it's almost been done, how do you say, to this point, it's been done to death, right? Every angle. I don't know unless there's some new evidence or new angle that comes out, it's like, we're not going to get much more. RFK, I felt like there was at least an opportunity to tell a story about who he was, how he challenged the establishment, and why I think he was killed. And I wanted to show that story, and then the parallel of him and how his son basically carries the mantle.
And I think it's really timely too, Sean, because obviously what happened last year in Butler, and then a month later, the other would-be attempt on Trump in, what was that, New Jersey, that would have been? A golf course in Florida, maybe, Doral?
Yeah.
I forget. I think it was Florida. And then, of course, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which we can get into in a little bit if you are okay talking about that. I kind of wanted to wait a little bit for the dust to settle. Obviously, I had my gut feeling about the whole Charlie Kirk thing, and I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. But to go back to RFK, I think it's very timely, and there are a lot of parallels to now our generation. I think you and I are we're probably a year or two apart in age. We're from that millennial generation, and we kind of grew up, looking at both Kennedy assassinations. But the RFK one, I agree with you. I don't think it got as much coverage, and I don't think it's been discussed as much. So it's very interesting to see you make this film. Obviously, RFK Jr. is the one Kennedy who's around and out there actually raising these issues and talking about it. Did you attempt to talk to anyone else from the Kennedy family or have any kind of correspondence with any other children of RFK or grandchildren, any other Kennedy cousins or anything?
Well, it's not a family story, so there was no need to get into other family members. In fact, I mean, I know one of his kids, Bobby's daughter, I've known longer than Bobby, and then I didn't, I chose not to interview her or any of his sons. He might have other daughters too, actually. He's got a lot of kids. I don't,
Yeah.
the point is, I didn't feel that it was about, how do you say, it was, when you do interviews, the sad thing with documentary is that you get a lot of interesting stuff and you really have to boil them down to a few sound bites.
Yeah.
Like there are some interviewees that we had to cut completely, just because we didn't have time to get into all the subject matter. And people like Nicole Shanahan, she's only been there for a few lines, right? But she's obviously a very intelligent woman, and there's a lot. Sometimes you want, when it comes to documentaries, I think it would be nice to just put out the full interviews, for people to digest more information. So when it came to the kids, and the family, I just didn't see the importance to this story that I was telling, because it's a very concise parallel of father-son and going back and forth across times, and how the tragedy of John F. Kennedy's death upon his brother, right, RFK, how that affects him. We parallel with the feeling that RFK Jr. has at the death of his father, right? So it's very tight how the structure is in terms of paralleling these two lives, and you then see how they overcome it. They come back they excel again, and then they fall again when it comes to political assassination with the father, character assassination with the son. It's very interesting how these two lives are so parallel.
Yeah, definitely. And you spoke about the courage, and I agree. I've long admired RFK Jr. Going back probably 15 years, maybe longer, with the environmental stuff. And then I had heard that he was on Charlie Rose or one of those programs in 2014, somewhere around there. And he had actually aired publicly for the first time his questions about the JFK assassination. And he told me when I interviewed him that he went to Dealey Plaza for the first time, really not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And I think it was JFK and the Unspeakable, the Douglas book, that really kind of propelled him, to visit Dealey Plaza. And he had a conversation before that with another researcher and author. I think it was David Talbot, who wrote Brothers, about Jack and Bobby. And that really kind of got him to look at this in the first place. Wow. So I think he's been behind the scenes, looking at it and with his own questions. And obviously it's your father, so it's it's going to hit you in a different way. And it's everyone is looking at it from the outside looking in. But for RFK Jr., this has been his life since he was really a little boy, starting with his uncle, and when he was, I think, 8 or 9, and then when his father was killed in '68, I think he was 14. And so it's been to see this play out in public, and then obviously he's been attacked, and now I think there's legislation to try and get him out as secretary. There, I think a Democratic rep is just trying to get Bobby out of his position in the cabinet. So yeah. There's the smearing of him and his name, and literally there's been threats to his safety. I mean, there was someone who showed up at his house during the presidential campaign, and it was either in 2023 or 24. And so, I mean, he didn't, he hasn't done himself any favors by speaking out and by running and by being in such a public arena. So I think that really does speak to his courage and his character. But yeah, it's just wild to see the parallels and see the attacks. They don't attack you if you're not above the target or if you're not being effective. So what do you think, RFK Jr. in Trump's cabinet, how do you view his work and performance thus far, 6-7 months in?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what he's going through, trying to clean out the essentially the shills, the deep state, big pharma types, the people that are just there, permanent bureaucracy, who don't really, how do you say, they have never necessarily thought for themselves or thought critically about these things. They've just kind of taken their paychecks. Either, maybe they came from big pharma or their friends are in it, and they're basically, trying to see about maybe getting a position there afterward. I mean, that's kind of the revolving door, right?
Or like Bernie and, Pocahontas screaming at him in those hearings, and Bobby's like, "How much money have you taken from big pharma?"
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an aspect of that, but there's also the whole, the sacred cows you don't question vaccines. I mean, it's pretty wild that it's almost like a religion. And so when it comes to what Bobby's doing, I can't really comment on all of it because I'm not really inside in any sense. I don't know all the battles that he's facing. I think that, there are certain things that they're dropping, like, some of the elements that can cause autism. And then, I mean, really, it's just like, we could say, we'd love to see him completely, clear everything out quickly, right? And get rid of the vaccine schedule, or really force the testing, the proper testing of vaccines, doing like a true methodological approach to, like, testing vaccinated versus unvaccinated children, and and doing definitive proof. But the problem is, again, with the way modern science is done, there's no proof of anything. There's evidence, and then there's how you basically interpret that evidence, right? And that's what I think a lot of people get confused, because they think that there has to be proof in order to make a decision. There doesn't have to be proof. There has to be evidence, and then you have to give people the freedom, right, to then decide accordingly. And I think that's why it's such a complicated discussion, these things, when it comes to things like, do vaccines cause damage, or autism or whatnot. It's like, well, they can be part of it. I don't think anyone is saying that they are the only cause, but again, it's like with smoking. I always go back to, like, this idea that smoking causes cancer. Well, all over the world, you see, like, the lung cancer rates are not what they are in America when it comes to, like, Japan or China or places like this where people smoke. I mean, there are many people you can anecdotally say can smoke to like 80 or 90, and they're not dying of lung cancer. And then I know people that die of lung cancer without smoking, without smoking cigarettes. So it's to say, we think that smoking causes cancer, but there's always a multitude of things that are affecting our health. And so the overall concept of making America healthy, I think, is wonderful. And I know that RFK Jr. is going to work towards that. But again, he has to be so careful with what he pushes, right?
Yeah.
Because already he's getting they're already trying to impeach him, right? They're already trying to oust him. So it's like, this guy's, he's in a position of authority with both of his hands tied behind his back, trying to juggle. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's wild to see. And that there's an argument, oh, he's not a doctor, he doesn't have a medical background. Well, majority of the people who have held the position that Bobby now has were not doctors either.
Yeah.
And when my brother worked for RFK Jr.'s campaign, and I was involved a little bit, not as much as my brother, but we were talking to Bobby more about foreign policy. That's kind of been our area, foreign policy and war and peace and that type of thing. And so I was kind of hoping he would get a position maybe related to intelligence or something to do with that. But I'm glad, because I know he's passionate about obviously you mentioned the vaccine stuff, and it's interesting. I've done over 200 of these episodes since 2015, and the only episode I've ever had taken down by YouTube was one where I had Mary Holland on. I don't know if you know her. I had Mary Holland. She worked with Bobby at Children's Health Defense.
That's right.
And we just had a discussion, just a calm, civil discussion about COVID and about vaccines. And before I could even put the episode, convert it to an audio and put it up on our Podbean and our Spotify, it was completely nuked and gone. So wow. It's just funny to me that we, and this is your third time on, and we've talked about quote unquote controversial topics. We can talk about assassinations. We can talk about historical stuff, other pretty, controversial things, and that's okay. But the minute you start having a discussion about COVID or vaccines, or it just kind of shows you who's really pulling the strings and how much they have to gain and lose. I mean, it's almost like for a lot of people, 2020 never happened, and they didn't behave like they were part of a religious cult and chastising people who just wanted to ask questions and have conversations. And I never asked anybody, oh, did you get the shot? Which one did you, it turned people, it made people kind of mental, and they treated others who questioned it or didn't want to get it, or maybe they had their own health reasons or religious reasons or whatever for not getting it, we're treated like pariahs, and now they have nothing to say. So what are they going to do next? You know, what's the next thing they're going to do? Because they did that with relative ease, you know.
Well, it wasn't relative ease. Remember, it was a when you put people under duress, right, for
In
prolonged
fear.
periods of time, you create a perfect storm for brainwashing. I mean, you know, it takes 3 weeks to start forming habits, right? So you have people in prolonged states, and remember, it wasn't a short period of time. It was, you know, 9 months. It was gestating the whole lockdowns. You couldn't go out without your mask. You had to, you know, be afraid of socializing and, you know, meeting anybody. You couldn't touch anyone. It was like this complete paranoia that was propagated for those that bought in. Obviously, a lot of conservative areas that I even drove through and visited, like they didn't have those kind of mandates, but the cities and the Democrat states and cities were buying in, and then media was propagating this every single minute of every day, you know, with their coronavirus counts and death counts, and every one time someone dies with COVID, they were counted as a COVID death, including, I'm told, George Floyd, apparently. So, I mean, the thing is that when you have that kind of propaganda being pushed in a population that's now under stress, right? Almost like a war state, right? It's like a state of duress where you can't really go out and socialize. You can't really, you know, talk to people in a normal way because there's always this fear virus that's out there. Then, you know, you're told, well, your only salvation is the vaccine. Yeah, a lot of people are going to buy that because they're under stress. You know, they've been conditioned to buy it. And so I don't know that it was, you know, it wasn't a normal situation where, as we've seen, they push the flu shots and things like this, and people, you know, do or don't get it. But people were conditioned for 9 months to believe that there was no salvation. It was like, you're not getting out of this until you take your shot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a good point. But I don't know, just it felt rapid in some ways, with which the way people would turn on others, or they would view you differently, or say things to you they never would have said before. And maybe it was out of that fear. And I want to give
fear. I mean, fear. I think fear played a lot of it into it, right?
Definitely.
Because it was a mixture of factors. It was the hatred of Trump, which was already, you know, Trump derangement syndrome is a real, like, I think it should be a real psychological condition. Right? I mean, truly.
It totally is. And I disagree with Trump. I mean, I was livid when he bombed Iran, and I hated that. And
there's a lot of things I can criticize Trump about, but
that doesn't mean that I'm going to melt down every day over him. He's you know what I mean, as a person.
No, but the TDS is a genuine condition, psychological condition. Like, you see people,
I've seen it.
They foam at the mouth. They can't. You just say, listen, give me like 3 things you don't like about Trump. They just start raving. It's not like, hey, let's have a mature conversation and debate. It's just sputtering and hatred and vitriol. So when you have that already in the psyche, and then this thing gets rolled out, and basically it's like, you know, you're going to die if you get this COVID, which was the initial sentiment. It was pretty incredible how people actually believed that. And they took polls. I mean, I remember Bill Maher even criticized the liberals, you know, in 21, saying if you ask Democrats, they think that like half the people that get COVID are dying. It was crazy. Like, he's like, or they're getting, like, half of them are getting hospitalized, and then, you know, if you get hospitalized, you're likely going to die. But it was crazy amount of people that actually were just buying the idea that if you got COVID, you pretty much were going to die. Well,
especially as a big boy like myself, you know, I'm a larger individual, and so you heard that if you're overweight, you will most certainly die. I mean, I have very healthy lungs. I've never smoked a cigarette, you know, other than being overweight, which obviously is not great, you know, but. Yeah, when I did get very sick from it, you know, that goes into your head. But you also got to, you know, look at everything, look at empirical, you know, data and evidence, and try and cut through all the media frenzy and all the, you know, people who are hysterical. Yeah. So,
did you take anything for it?
When I first had it, no, I just rested and did a lot of fluids, vitamin C, water. Obviously, just stayed at home. I didn't, nothing specific. No, I
Yeah.
just kind of waited it out, and it was rough. But honestly, I had pneumonia before, and I got to say, pneumonia was way worse.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't fun. I mean, but when you're sick, you stay home, regardless of whether it's COVID or a flu or
Yeah.
you don't go and you're not trying to spread it to grandma, which is what a lot of people were virtue signaling. You want to kill my grandma, so
Yeah, but it's also stupid because we knew that you could be a carrier, it's just like any cold or, you get, cold or flu or whatever. I mean, you can literally be asymptomatic. I mean, I never got COVID, but I know I was exposed to it. I know, how do you say? I had symptoms of long COVID that I have a holistic doctor that we worked on with,
yeah.
because he has a different approach, but it was nothing. I was never down with COVID. I never lost my sense of smell. I never had any of the symptoms that people were talking about. And so I know we were all exposed to it. And I think that, again, I also took ivermectin. I did things proactively, whenever, just like a month, taking it around once or twice a month.
I had a close family member who took ivermectin as well, and he was fine the next day.
Yeah, exactly. So. But yeah, I mean, basically, the fear, is something that I tuned into like immediately within the first week that they locked down. I just said, this is a fear virus, and you have to face your fear. And fear of death is obviously one of the great fears in life. We all have it. But the idea that like, oh, you're afraid of getting something and killing someone, I mean, you got to get that out of your psyche, because ultimately we have to recognize, and this was also like very much the message that I was talking about in my interviews and my documentaries at the time, Best Kept Secret. We are entering an age of greater sovereignty and self-responsibility, which is what healthcare is all about. That freedom of medical freedom is not to say that you can't take a medication or an antibiotic or take a vaccine. But that's ultimately it's up to you to decide what aligns for you, and have that that responsibility to say, listen, if I'm doing this for my body, working with my body, knowing that my system is different from your system, and it's the same with everything, whether it's diet, whether it's like we talked about, it's why some people can smoke cigarettes every day and live long lives, and other people smoke one cigarette and they get sick. It's just a different body. Like, we're a different genetic structure. We're and energetically we run differently. And that's the thing that bothers me, is the holistic systems, Ayurvedic systems, things that tie back to you could call Eastern traditions, recognize the individual sovereignty. And what's curious is that the West, which has actually been at the forefront of recognizing the power of the individual, right, ever since arguably since the days of Alexander the Great, but really since the Renaissance in particular, it's like we have honored the individual spirit, right? That's what democracy is supposed to be about. Is democracy and a republic are meant to really recognize the power of the individual. But yet the Western medical modality doesn't honor the power of the individual. The Western modality says this is the cookie cutter approach. Everyone must take a shot.
Right. Yeah. This is what's going to work for everyone. And
I mean, Eastern totalitarian mentality. It's not a Western democratic principle.
I point people towards, the 90s with Purdue and the Sackler family. And there was a great series on Hulu called Dope Sick. I don't know if you had a chance to see that with Michael Keaton. And that
it showed you the corruption of the FDA. At the same moment that Dope Sick was a hit show on television, they were pushing the COVID vaccine, FDA approved, and it was so ironic because all you do is watch Dope Sick and go, I wonder, the FDA changed their, basically gave the approval to this which drug was it?
Oxy back. Are you talking
exactly Oxycontin, right? And they took off the warning label that it was highly addictive. So it showed you the FDA collusion essentially with big pharma, and that was there for you to see. So if you can't recognize that, hey, if it happened then, it might be happening now. But again,
it's on steroids now, Sean, and it's wild because most of the people and political entities that blew the whistle on that and talked about that and had that as one of their issues. And it's a real issue. It's a good issue. They were the ones first in line to get this experimental, this new thing that usually takes 10 years to come out, right? 8-10 years. And they were quick to do that. And you know what, Sean? I never get enough credit for Operation Warp Speed, okay? I should get more credit for that, okay? I got that thing rolled out to market so quickly, and I saved millions, billions, maybe trillions of lives, okay? And it's funny because, you see Kamala saying, I absolutely will not take it if it's a Trump thing. And then it's like, well, that's what it was. So
that's why they had to flip the script, and they had to get him out. The Democrats never would have taken it.
It's that, and it's the hypocrisy, and and like I was saying, more Democrats and more on the left-leaning persuasion were very skeptical of big pharma for years and years. So, man, I just think it's one of the most insidious psyops that we've seen in our lifetime. I mean, it's up there with the war on terror. I mean, it's an even more nebulous, faceless terror than jihadists around the corner that could get you at any time. That's why it was effective.
That whole thing, I don't even know how that thing lasted so long, that fear of the jihadists. I mean, I guess 9/11, the towers coming down was such a traumatic visual experience and psychic attack. But I always said from that moment, I said, it would have been scarier to me if there was, if this wasn't a planned operation, if this was truly just like a bunch of radical jihadists. I'm like, if they had just done like a dozen suicide bombings on buses and malls and you name it, right? Just a whole dozen like that, just bombs going off in public places across America, that would have scared me more than that orchestrated takedown of the towers, because it was meant to be I think a mass. It was meant for a lot of reasons, but
I
think there was financial elements involved, to getting rid of, as they talk about in Black 9/11 is a really good book on it. And also Another 19 is another good book about the potential real conspirators in it. But the takedown of the towers was such a psychic, spiritual ritual, right? That was done and creates a trauma within the collective. One of the probably the most viewed event in human history. But if they had just done something like, more sporadic and random, that would have scared me more, because then it would have been like, well, if I go down to the mall, is someone going to blow himself up, right? Yeah,
and that's the thing with these shootings that have happened the last couple of years, and especially this very public execution of Charlie Kirk. I mean, you could be out and about at any kind of event or doing something, and this violence could flare up. And I think they're certainly using that and capitalizing on that to try and scare and divide us. And unfortunately, I think it's been pretty effective. I mean, although a recent poll showed that I think less than 6% of our country actually believe that political violence is acceptable and necessary. So I think by and large, regular citizens know to their core that it's not right and it's not acceptable, but man, they're squeezing all the juice out of this, man. I think they're really trying to get as much mileage as they can to scare people and divide people. And unfortunately, in the echo chambers, that gets played up, and you really hear.
Yeah, I don't think political violence is designed to rally people. I don't think that's the reason for it. I think it's about silencing the threats. It's like a Charlie Kirk who could think for himself, who had the momentum to become, I think, potentially a president one day. I mean, he could have certainly, because he was touching young people and communicating to young people and, speaking directly to them, creating a movement, right? Already at such a young age. I mean, obviously he was involved with helping Trump's campaign and was close with Trump, but I think he easily could have swayed people to start his own political movement in the next, in this next coming, 5-10 years. And it's interesting. I mean, you see, it's like, he could have been like another JFK type. And so you think about the assassination as that. You silenced someone who had that charisma, that potential, was talking to millions of young people and was questioning, especially they talk about at the end, questioning Israel, which you're not allowed to do publicly. And
yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Have you read Max Blumenthal's pieces for the Gray Zone about that? The kind of
well,
behind.
I mean, I know Max for years. You know, we used to interview him on RT, and you know, he's an outspoken critic, and you know, of Israeli policy, and I haven't, you know, again, I haven't gone into all the detail on it because I just think it's self-evident, and people are going to figure it out or not.
Yeah, and it was really great to see you and your old man on Patrick Bet David giving him a little education about Israel. And he was trying kind of acting the fool a little bit. Oh, what do you mean? What are you talking about? This is a small country. Is this influential? And you and Oliver were like, yeah, look at this, look at this, look at this. That was
you know, again, you can't, you know, Charlie Kirk was talking about these things on TVD right before he passed away, right? You know, people understand something.
Well, I mean, they're a pariah state now, Sean. Let's be honest. They're a pariah state now. Do you see what happened at the UN? All those people walking out and booing BB, and I mean, the world, the mask is off. And as far as I'm concerned, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that. It's it's an interesting issue about power. You know, I always used to ponder this. You know, what is power? You have you know, there's a spiritual power, right? Religious leaders have the so-called spiritual power, spiritual keys. You've got the political power, right, to move people, and then you've got the military power. Politics, I guess, could be kind of part of law, you know, legal. I could say politics is involved with legal, right? So there's legal power, and then there's the military. And at the end of the day, we are still in a world where the person with the gun makes the rules. That's just where we are.
You ever see that movie Men with Guns? That's a really great flick that came out, I believe, in the late 80s or early 90s, and it speaks to what that point you just made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's Men with Guns? Was it a mercenary movie? No.
I think it's a Latin American film, and I saw it in college. A very far left liberal professor showed that to me in college, and it had an impact on me because it really just speaks to what you just said about ultimately the military might or who has the guns.
John Sayles did it. Okay.
Yeah, what year was it? 87 or 90 or
7?
87?
97.
97. Okay, I knew it was somewhere in that.
Cool.
In that era. It's a very, very powerful film if you get a chance to see it.
Yeah, well, Sayles is a good director. I remember the poster. I never saw the film. Okay, yeah, good recommendation.
Definitely worth watching. I still got to check out the film your old man made with Willem Dafoe in the mid 80s. It's the name of a country. I think it was Willem Dafoe.
Oh, you're talking about Salvador.
Salvador. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant James Woods. Yeah.
That's
now. Is James Woods kind of like a journalist in another country in that film, or is he? I don't know.
It's based on a true story. Richard Boyle was the journalist. He's passed away. He was, muckraker. Muckraker. He was, you know, a bit of what's his name from the Fear and Loathing guy.
He's like a Hunter S. Thompson type character.
Exactly. You know, just you got to enjoy the film. It's actually quite funny. He and Belushi, it's John's brother Jim Belushi, are basically down in El Salvador raising hell, and discovering the death squads that were down there being backed by us at the time.
God.
And yeah, I mean, that was always in the guise of communism, and that's part of what it's always scary to come back to that same mantra over and over, where Trump is saying like we're gonna end U.S. aid and support all these big spending donations that we do, which I understand, like wanting to cut back on all the spending, but then he's like, now we're gonna spend that on anti-Marxist campaigns. What? Jesus, I don't know.
That could cover that could be the guise of a lot of different things, Sean. Yeah, absolutely. It's very very vague and very broad.
Marxism. I mean, geez. I mean, honestly, I get it. Like, I get there's some fanatics and some some people that really still believe. But it's the majority of people are not buying into communism or Marxism at this point.
I mean, come on, it's 5 or 6 decades a bit late. It's a little bit long in the tooth as a
Yeah, I mean, there are important. I think there are important critiques of modern capitalism that have, that
Sure.
are, we have to reassess the financial system. Most importantly, I would argue, it's not about hating billionaires, which so many people say, just make the billionaires pay for it. I go, do you understand that we're 30+ trillion in debt? The billionaires can't afford to pay for it. Okay,
That's not going to do anything. Yeah, that's a Band-Aid on a shotgun blast.
Yeah, this is a financial system that has created incessant inflation since the creation of the Federal Reserve System, and essentially, like, we are in a hole that we can never get out of unless we have a debt jubilee and some type of restructuring of the financial system, maybe going back to like a gold or gold and silver backed currency. Again, reining in government, federal government spending, which we liked with the idea of Doge, but I don't know what happened to that since Elon stepped out. And I mean, basically just getting a hold of the idea of a republic serving the people and not just this federal system that Trump promised to drain. I don't know. I think my critique of Trump is just, is he still serving the same cabal that Israel is certainly a part of, but the deep state and the wizards of finance and Switzerland and whatnot are really the masters. And is he still serving that same cabal?
I was in a lot of trouble, Sean, in the early 90s. Okay, I was in the hole of 900 million, and a good friend of mine, Wilbur Ross, was there to bail me out. And we know Wilbur Ross was part of the Rothschild Bank and many other Zionist billionaires. I mean, you saw Trump, getting Bibi's chair for him. I mean, I think that's a great picture, an image that speaks to a lot. We have to be honest about it, and I've always been honest in my critiques of Trump, and I feel like those are big ones. And under the Republicans and Trump, man, the debt continues to go up. I mean, they're not bashful about spending money and taking our money, for what, $1 trillion for the military budget for the Pentagon. Didn't it breach $1 trillion in the last year? So
which one?
The Pentagon budget, didn't it breach $1 trillion in the last year?
I mean, that they've audited the Pentagon and failed like 6 audits. I mean, I don't but they've failed multiple audits. And they basically say, like, remember, it was before 9/11 that Rumsfeld said they were missing like $2+ trillion. I think they're way over that at this point. They've got to be at like maybe 6 to 10 trillion plus at this point, right?
And we're talking about 36 trillion overall for the national debt. Supposedly, it's probably more than that. But I don't even know, what do you do about that? Some people are like, just wipe it clean, or couldn't China call that in, or Japan? I mean, they're part of.
Well, they don't own it all. I mean, remember, a lot of this is owed to the Federal Reserve. But again, like, calling it in for what? Like, if China wants to be paid. But again, there's a balance here, because we are buying Chinese goods. So, they can't call it. How do you say? Trump put it this way, right? Like, if you owe the bank, whatever, $100, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank $1 billion, you own the bank. Something to that effect, right? I mean,
so
that effect.
Well, the Adelsons certainly helped Trump. Sheldon when he was alive, and now Miriam, is carrying that banner. So, maybe dudes like you and I, we can max out and give Trump what, $2 or $3 grand. He's probably not going to take our phone call versus their phone call. So that's a big part of the problem. And switching gears while I have you for a few more minutes. You were in another film that you made with your father, Natural Born Killers. And that was a real commentary on societal violence, I feel, and violence in the media. And I just was wondering if you had any cool memories of Rodney Dangerfield working with him. He's one of my favorite comics, man. You must have been, 8, 9, 10 when you worked with him?
I was about 9 years old. Yeah, it was great. I remember, like, he was considerate, I would say. He was very considerate. He was, there's a lot of the innuendo in that scene was molestation of his daughter.
It's dark.
And he was kind of concerned about some of the lines he would say, like, do you really want me to, say this in front of your son? And my dad's like, he doesn't know what you're talking about anyway, which probably was true at the time. But I just remember him being, basically considerate in that regard, and very just I think he got along well with my father. They both had that. He gave my dad a jacket. I think, I can't get no respect, right? That was Dangerfield's thing, and I think my dad felt that way. I think they resonated in that way. They always felt like a bit like underdogs, and he was great. So in terms of other like memories, it was just it's interesting because that film NBK, we called it NBK until it came out, and then Natural Born Killers, but NBK was like, it was a real, I want to say like 2 years, year and a half process, because I remember when he first got the script, and it was like my mom and him were arguing about it because they were like right on the edge of their divorce or separation and into the divorce, and she was just like, oh, it's just like so evil, and these serial killers basically just get away with murder, and he was like, I guess, just playing out these demons essentially. But we watched it all together recently, and it's funny because I was watching it going, what I'm saying, what you're missing though is that you are the media. You want to think that you're separate from the Downey Jr. character, but you are the media.
No, we're right there, man, right in it, dude.
You're part of it. I mean, you're the filmmaker. Maybe you're doing it in a different way. He's also been a journalist. He's also interviewed serial killers, so-called, right? People that have killed leaders, Castro, Chavez, Putin,
Putin.
Any leader has orders, people die.
Trump.
Order. Well, my dad hasn't interviewed Trump, but my point is that
I would love to see that.
He interviewed these people, right? And it's like kind of like Downey Jr. interviewing Mickey, and it's like, one guy, they're demons, obviously. Mickey and Mallory are demons, but it's like they're killing people. And then, he's pointing out, but we're like in a system where everything is killing. You've got industry, you've got war, you've got, corporations, like everything is killing, right? And I think that's the question, is like, that my dad gets to the point of just saying, look, it's only love that's going to defeat this machine that's just gobbling everything up.
We all feed it. And, now with the true crime stuff, I would argue that that's kind of the modern day pulp and the modern day thing, where everyone's like, oh, and like a crime will happen, a murder, and then a few years later there's a Netflix show about it, and it's like, well, these are real people that were killed, and their families are dealing with the fallout, but it's like entertainment now for our society. So I think that movie was ahead of its time, man, in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was. Yeah, I mean, Tarantino had the original idea, and I don't know what the heck he was watching at that time to come up with it, but it was really prescient. Really, 1990, I think, was the draft. 90, it was like he really was like tapping into something in that zeitgeist of the transition of the 90s, into like the reality TV. That's what it was in the 90s. It was the hard copies and the cops and the real world, all that. But 1990, I don't know what he was tuning into. That he's like, let's have a journalist, a gonzo journalist, exploring serial killers, and then, we'll make it sexy.
It was Woody Harrelson and who was the actress there? Juliette Lewis, who was in Yellow Jackets fairly recently. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that show. That's a pretty interesting show.
Is it? Yeah,
I think it speaks to some MK Ultra and cannibalism. There's some stuff going on in that show. Let's do a quick question before I let you go here, Sean, from John B. He said, I heard that Trump Hegseth have called generals and admirals to D.C. for a meeting this Tuesday. Unprecedented if true. Have you heard about that, or any insight on that?
I've been into the whole 10 days of darkness for so long, and like whether or not we're going to have like a real transition and reset, and I have no expectations at this point. I don't have any expectations. I have no hope for for the white hats that are,
I'm just hoping that we don't have a full scale invasion into Iran with our troops for Netanyahu.
I'll be honest,
that's what he wants.
I don't see the point. I mean, the interesting thing is that I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime. I think that you could easily get rid of the mullahs, but I don't see how U.S. troops are going to try to occupy Iran, because I think the Iranian people will do the same thing as happened with Iraq. They'll resist, even though it would a lot of them would be sympathetic to seeing the mullahs go.
Sure.
You could maintain the regime in Iran without the mullahs. Basically, you separate church from state, and I think if that happened, it'd be fine. But I don't know the point of invading Iran. Trump isn't stupid. His whole argument against the Iraq war was like, here we are. It's we don't even get the oil. What was the point of that?
Right. I'm going to send Exxon in, Sean. They're going to take the oil and they're going to do it like you wouldn't believe.
I don't think he's going to go into a full Iran war. I mean, I think he would
it
would be such a disaster for him.
Because it speaks to what Iran is a country of mostly younger people too. I mean, it's there's a lot of younger generations, and they don't want war with us. They're more modernized, and it would be I think it'd be worse than Iraq because it is a bigger country, more population, and
it creates. Listen, don't kid yourself. The Saudi Arabia has normalized relations with Iran pretty much. The Pakistanis are allies with Saudis. All these countries are looking at the bombing of Qatar as they call it, as a real provocation. They're saying, man, Israel's out of control, and the United States is either letting them do it, or Israel basically tells the U.S. what to do.
Yeah, they're pulling our chain. It's tough to say.
It's not good. It's not good for the region, because no one now trusts. If you want to build trust in the region, and you're letting Israel attack, inside of Qatar, you're basically saying, well, anything goes. So these countries have to, they may not trust the United States. They may look to China and Russia. And it's a stupid place we're in right now. It's a really stupid place because we had the opportunity to really lead the world in the wake of the Soviet collapse in a positive way. And unfortunately, the cabal and its greed and its financial system that is predicated on debt and debt slavery and human trafficking and all the ugliness, arms dealing and drug dealing and all this, right? It's like they're not going to give up without a fight. And if that may, does it escalate to World War III? It's really crazy when Trump starts talking about that, doing what he said he was going to do, which was, end the war with Russia and Ukraine. Instead, he's talking about Ukraine winning the war. I mean, it's like, what in the heck is going on?
I know, right? He's saying that. Well, excuse me, on day one, Sean, I'm going to end this thing on day one. Okay, we're 8 months in, and now he's saying, but he's also saying he's not going to let Israel annex the West Bank.
Yeah, but he's so. I mean, honestly, I don't think people take him seriously at this point.
It's hard to. With that.
He says one thing one day, and then the next day he says the opposite. And I think, honestly, it's like, who can trust him at this point?
Well, we got, we'll see how it plays out. And the film is RFK Legacy, and I saw a post you did. There's a wide release coming next month. Could that potentially include some screenings? We'd love to put together a screening up here in New Hampshire. That would be wild.
You guys should do it. I think the key for this is,
would you come be a part of it?
Possibly. I think just, grassroots, hold screenings, watch it with an audience. It's a really powerful experience. I just did it down in Florida with a group, and it was wonderful to watch it with an audience. I think that would be great if more people who love the movie or, really support RFK Jr., what he's doing, host a little screening. It's, theaters want us. The theaters are sitting idle because there's only so many movies that they can release nowadays, right? It's not like the old days when it was like, you'd have like 4 or 5 movies coming out every weekend, right? It was always packed. The theaters want movies. I guarantee you contact your local theater and say, hey, how much for a screening? It probably would be like, a couple $100.
Well, they're starving for content.
Exactly. And then, you either host it or you sell tickets and you get people to come and just show up for a night, and I'm telling you, this is where it's at. It's like, we've just got to, there's an important message here. There's an important story, grassroots, host a screening.
Well, maybe we can put something together. I really appreciate your time, brother. And tell us where people can watch the film if they don't want to go to a screening, or if they want to watch it. They want to stream it from the safety of their homes, which I understand.
Yeah. It's on Angel. It's on Angel Studio right now. So Angel is the distributor. They have a streaming platform, and then you can watch it next month. Basically, like 3 weeks from now, it will be on Amazon Prime and Apple and the other streaming platforms where you can rent it for, I don't know, $5 or whatever it is.
Nice, awesome. Any what we got coming up for future projects? Can you tease anything you're working on now, or just kind of promoting this now and seeing how it goes?
You know what? Honestly, I have no idea what's going to come next. We are in between.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, Sean. Thanks for coming on again, and we'd love to have you on. Hopefully when things have settled down a little and we're not in World War III. So we're going to see what happens. Okay, we'll see what happens. We didn't even get to talk about all the president's men, but we'll talk about it next time.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Appreciate it.
All right.